Good evening, everyone. Welcome. This is 2A Tonight. I'm Mark Halperin. Grateful to you for closing out your week with us here on what is currently scheduled to be our final episode of the week. And it's an interesting news day. I have to tell you, there's a bunch of stories. I may speed read the stories just to give you a sense of the breadth, not the depth, but the breadth of what happened today that we'll talk about with our great guests. And as always, we'll welcome your questions here at the end of the program. So if you're on the platform, want to get on the conversation at any point, feel free to raise your hand. And our guests will be here. All right, I'm going to do this. Every night I don't really care about format on this program. It's whatever suits me. So here we go. You remember that guy? Maybe we'll pull up a YouTube clip of him. The guy who talked really fast. You remember he did ads? He did blah, 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 blah. That's what I feel like doing here. Here we go. I'm going to try to read the news really fast, and then we'll come back to some of these things. Here we go. Governor Walz had a press conference and talked about the Somali situation. I'm not doing a good job of reading fast. The Maryland man spoke out against injustice. Bill Gates talked about meeting Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Let's see. Pete Hegseth moved the Space Command to Alabama. The National Trust is suing the White House over the ballroom construction. The Democrats on the House Investigative Committee released a bunch of photos from the Epstein matter that included photos of Donald Trump and Bill Clinton and others. The Wall Street Journal had an interview with Donald Trump in the Oval Office in which he kind of was all over the place about who his next Fed pick's going to be. He sort of suggested at points it was one of his Kevins, Hassett or Worse, but then also said there were other people in play. The whole thing's both confusing and different and not different at all. There was a secret meeting causing kerfuffle between a senior Ukrainian official and the head of the FBI and the deputy at the FBI. Still not entirely clear what that's about. Anyway, those stories and more, including another look at my 8 for 28. I did on Next Up started a regular feature of who I think the most likely 8 Democrats to be the nominee for president in 2028 are. And happy to say it's caused its own kerfuffle. A lot of strong opinions in both amongst Nexters and in here in the two-way community about who's on my list and who's not on my list. And so we'll run through that with our guests and with you, and it's super curious to know what you all think. Who should be higher, who should be lower, who's on the list, who shouldn't be, who's off the list, who should be. So we'll do some of that as well. And Donald Trump, moments ago in the Oval Office, was meeting with the U.S. Olympic hockey champions from yesteryear, and they gave him a hat. And we're going to start with that, even before our guests get here. Sam, you got that to play, or it's not ready yet? You got that?
It's ready.
It's ready. All right, here's the president in the Oval Office with the fabled Olympic hockey team, and they give him a hat, and he makes a Michael Dukakis joke, which is right par for the course for Donald Trump. Play that, please.
Bill Baker. I'm from Minnesota. I know that right now that doesn't ring very well. Hopefully we can get that turned around.
Do we have Somalians in the any Somalians on the team? I don't think so. Ihan, Omar.
The pride we felt in 1980 was incredible, and we are starting to feel that again thanks to your leadership. Thank you very much.
Well, Minnesota is a great place, and this is a great leader right here from Minnesota. He loves it. Not happy with what's going on up there.
Mr. President, Mike Ruzioni, on behalf of the team.
Mike Ruzioni.
Wow.
Exciting.
We wore the opening ceremonies in Lake Placid.
Thank you.
We'd like you to have that.
Wow.
And more importantly, I don't think words can explain how proud we are for what you've done for our team.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Let's see, what do I do with that strap?
There you go. Now we can take a picture.
You got to take a picture. You remember a certain governor in Massachusetts when they put that helmet on? That was not good. Michael did that. Yep. They put that helmet on. That was the end of his political career. Okay. Yeah, that's good.
But the honor that you bestowed upon our team is something that's incredible.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, I feel it.
All right. Classic Trump moment in 1,000 different ways. And I will tell you, it's hard not to laugh obsequiously in the Oval Office if the president, whoever the president is, telling a joke. It's just the reality of life. All right. Let's do a quick let's see here. Yeah, quick word from a first sponsor, then bring in our guest. We'll talk about the news, and we're going to bringing all you in. So please raise your hand if you're on the platform, want to get a word in during the show. Here we go. Cozy Earth, still available to you, 40% off, but act tonight. Trust me, I can't tell you when it's ending, but act tonight. 40% off everything on the Cozy Earth website. Those are the sheets, the bubble cuddle blanket, the towels. You'll never use another towel again. You may travel with these towels over winter break and say the hotel towels, well, they're not good enough. And then, of course, the t-shirts. And then, of course, the pants. All available to you now at extraordinary 40% off. Go to cozyearth.com. Buy something for everyone on your list, as well as some stuff for yourself. It's not effortless to buy pants for others, but you can. And, of course, if they don't fit, you'll send it back. Cozy Earth is giving the gift of comfort that lasts beyond the holidays and carries into a cozy new year. 40% off everything on the site. If you're listening now, you have time to give the gift of luxury this holiday season, cozyearth.com. The promo code is two-way for an extraordinary 40% off everything that you purchase. Thank you for your attention to that matter. Ladies and gentlemen, two great guests tonight. And unless I'm wrong, holy cow. All right, we may have some news during the show, so stand by. Unless I'm wrong, our two guests tonight have never been on the program before. Lori, is that right? Is that right?
That is
Never been?
correct.
All right. Two new guests. Honored, delighted, grateful. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. It's the Andrew Aydin. Andrew, what kind of last name is Aydin?
It's Turkish.
Turkish.
Say Aydin, but my
Aydin.
father.
Did I mispronounce it, is what you're telling me?
Close enough, man. I
Aydin.
haven't watched it long enough. You learn never to
No,
correct
no,
someone
no.
in your
No,
name.
no, no. I'm glad that you did. Aydin. Andrew Aydin. Andrew, what's your connection to American politics?
I spent about 15 years on Capitol Hill. Wrote 4 books with John Lewis. We won the National Book Award together in 2016. Did a couple congressional campaigns, a presidential campaign, and a bunch of local and state legislative work. Been around a while, but now I write and I help out where I can, and I also hide in the woods and farm.
Hide in the wood. What do you farm?
Mostly hay and Christmas trees.
Oh, hay and Christmas trees. Do you sell the trees?
Not yet. We're trying to actually get them coning.
Yeah.
'Cause once you get them coning, then you can reproduce them at size, and otherwise you just lose the whole tree.
Yeah. So interesting. What presidential campaign did you work on?
2016.
2016 of who?
Well, I worked for John Lewis for a long time, so you can probably guess.
For Hillary?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Well, I worked coordinating between the state party and the presidential campaign because
State party in Georgia?
with the Democratic Party down there, yeah.
Okay. And almost nobody on this Zoom except the two of us, I would guess, or on this platform, I should say, has ever got to meet the great John Lewis. He was an extraordinary person. I met him a few times, and every time there was just something magical about him. Just a man of such dignity and perseverance and integrity and focus and charm. Those are the adjectives that come to my mind. But how did you meet Congressman Lewis? And tell us about sort of your view of his role in history.
Well, I started in his office answering his mail when I was all of 22 years old. And he'd been my congressman since I was 3 years old. And he, I'd been in state legislative politics, and then I'd done veterans and military affairs for another congressman. And I was just trying to move. I wanted to be in Washington. I wanted to be close to my mom because she was sick at the time. And the congressman and I started talking about old Atlanta, like the 90s, right? Like the Olympics and all this sort of stuff. And finally, I told him, I'd worked for other elected officials, but my family never even knew who they were. But I told him I was interviewing with you, and they got all excited. They said, "Oh, he's a good one." And he said, "Well, you call your mother and you tell her you got the job." And so that's where we all started. And then from there, it was, campaigns for him and in the office and working my way all the way up, having just about every different job you can have in a congressional office. But the John Lewis I knew is a lot different than the John Lewis that people saw on television, right? Because, that was him standing up, speaking up. But then there's this personal side of him where, like, he was funny. He was goofy. He used to play practical jokes on us. Like, if he was in the office and he was wanting us to come into the office rather than, assemble everybody, he would take these little bags of jelly beans that we would get from other congressional offices, and he would throw them over the dividers in our office so they'd land on our desk, and we'd be like, "Oh, well, I guess we got a meeting now." And so it's things like that. And we traveled together for so long because we wrote so many books together and spoke so many times at schools that, it's you wake up in the morning on the road somewhere, you got to make sure he gets fed. He loved blueberry muffins, and make sure he's ready. And there's just a different type of camaraderie that you get both being in the congressional office and traveling and writing books and things like that, for a kid like me who was raised by a single mother, my father left when I was a kid, it was this experience of finding a father figure that you never thought you'd find. And he took care of me. I mean, he helped me buy my first suit. It was things like that. But then you get into work mode, right? And it was this nonviolent war you were a part of, and it was serious, and he could change just like that. And I think that's really what helped him survive, right?
Yeah.
Having both sides of that
Yeah.
to his personality.
Andrew, thank you for sharing all that. And again, I just say, I don't say this about many people. I feel bad for those of you who never got to meet this guy. He's just an incredible guy. I've met so many, had the privilege of meeting so many interesting and sometimes famous people. Almost nobody liked this guy, and everybody had so much respect for him. Joel's here. Joel Griffith. You've probably never met Congressman Lewis. I'm guessing. Maybe you did.
No, unfortunately, I did not.
Yeah. Well, Joel, welcome. And Joel works at the Senior Fellow Advancing America Freedom. Advancing America Freedom is an organization started by former Vice President Pence, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct. Started by former Vice President Pence several years ago, and we are a merry band of warriors fighting for traditional American values and economic freedom and limited government.
Yeah, Joel's worked at a variety of organizations, similar agendas, but now is where he is. Tell us about Congressman Pence, former Congressman Pence, former Vice President. How long have you known him, and what's the basis of your ties to him?
Well, I've long admired the former vice president, even before he was the vice president. I've been a political nerd my entire life. I grew up listening to Rush Limbaugh. And so for quite a long time, I admired him throughout Congress and then, of course, as governor. But I didn't have the opportunity to meet the former vice president until I began work with Advancing American Freedom back in January. So I've definitely enjoyed being able to interact with him on occasion and talk about family life and, of course, talk about all the big problems that are facing this country. And what I really appreciate about him and about the office is really a shared sense of optimism about not just where the conservative movement can go, but about what our nation can achieve going forward.
Yeah, grateful to you both for being here. I just had an epiphany, which some people might care about, and some of you may say you're wasting time, Mark. But one of the greatest jobs I ever had was when I worked for Peter Jennings, who was my mentor at ABC News. And one of the things Peter asked me to do is to bring in people from Washington. We were based in here in New York. Bring in people from Washington, types that I should meet. Not just Washington types, people in politics, governors, etc. And so I brought in all sorts of people. I remember I brought George Allen in, who was then the governor of Virginia, and people said he was going to run for president and be a great candidate. And Governor Allen came into Peter's office and was wearing his dirty cowboy boots, and he put them up on Peter's coffee table. And I knew right away that meeting was not going to go well. But it just occurred to me, amongst the people I brought in to meet Peter at one point, then Vice President Pence, or Congressman Pence, I should say, and Congressman Lewis, separate days, of course, but those were amongst the people I brought in to meet Peter. And I will say both those meetings went quite well. Not like the George Allen meeting, which went less well. Those meetings went quite well, and Peter loved them both. He really found both of them quite interesting. And boy, I wish I had videos of those two meetings to share tonight, but I don't, because they were private. Gentlemen, grateful to you both for being here. Here we go. News of the day. Let's start with this. President Trump did an interview with the Wall Street Journal, number 30, please. And the Wall Street Journal went hard in on Kevin Hassett was going to be the Fed chair pick. This was like a week and a half ago. 2 straight days, they had stories saying it's Hassett. And the president egged them on by saying, I've made my decision. I know who I'm going to pick. And so if you talk to sources and you believe the president when he said he decided, you'd say, of course, he's going to pick Kevin Hassett. It was the only thing that made sense. And then Kevin Hassett was asked, well, are you the pick? And he said, well, sometimes the president makes up his mind and then changes his mind. Today, the president, in an interview at the Wall Street Journal, said a bunch of things that are kind of confusing and conflicting. He said, here's the headline from the Journal exclusive interview. Trump says he is leaning toward Warsh or Hassett to lead the Fed. In an interview at the Wall Street Journal, Trump said the next Fed chair should consult with him on interest rates. That's an interesting thing, too. He said, I'm not familiar with this, he said presidents used to get consulted all the time by the Fed chair on interest rates. I guess it sounds off to me, but maybe he's right. But he really doesn't say in the interview he's leaning towards Warsh or Hassett. He kind of says, yeah, I love Mike Evans, but then they're interviewing 2 other people. It's all very confusing. And I continue to believe that he may not pick anybody on that list, and he's not picking until next year. So we'll see. It's all very confusing. But again, if you believe the Wall Street Journal, who previously told us it was definitely Hassett, it seems like they think now it's going to be Hassett or Warsh. Andrew, you got a view on any of this? If you don't, you can just phone a friend to take a lifeline or pass. But do you have a view on the Fed, on who the president might pick, on one or both Kevins?
No, I mean, I'm shocked that there's chaos and confusion in this administration. I'm just shocked.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I think, look, the Fed was created as an independent body because in the 19th century, we had a tremendous number of bank runs and we went through this boom and bust cycle. And it was created to be an independent body that regulated and controlled the flow of money in the United States so that we could have a reliable financial infrastructure. Breaching that independence could be devastating to the American economy. It could be devastating to people's savings in their bank accounts. And I think as long as this chaos and this confusion is going on, we're all at risk. And I just hope that things calm down, that there can be some responsible decision making, that people who are qualified and independent will be put in place.
Joel, if the president asks you which Kevin to pick, would you have a point of view on that?
Yeah, certainly, because the next Fed chair is going to be serving an important role. And my concern is that the president has made clear that he wants a Fed chair who will do his bidding on interest rates. And unfortunately, the president's direction, preferred direction on interest rates, is in a direction that will make the cost of living yet more expensive for American families. So I think this is really going to be a big moment for the Senate, regardless of whom the president selects as his nominee. The Senate has a role here. They have to confirm that nominee, and I think those hearings should be intense. Those hearings should ensure that not only does the nominee have the requisite economic training, but that nominee will actually have the wherewithal to stand up against the president if the president tries to cajole him or her into making decisions that might be politically expedient, but that might have long-term negative economic consequences.
My reporting still stands, as far as I know, which is the president wants someone who will do his bidding, who he can trust, who won't double cross him from his perspective. And Scott Bessent, who the president's listening to on this, wants someone who has the stature that he believes is required to lead the Fed. And I believe that part of why he's having trouble picking is they haven't found anybody who the president believes and Scott Bessent believes satisfies both of those. So we'll see. All right. Earlier today, the Democrats on the House committee investigating the Epstein matter put out a bunch of photos related from the Epstein estate. Some of them are the most run-of-the-mill things you've ever seen. Some of them are quite provocative. Trump-branded condoms, for instance, was in there. Some are Democrats, some are Republicans. There's some pictures of Larry Summers. There's no photo that's like explicitly incriminating, and they did not release any context. Where did these photos come from? When were they taken? Were they attached emails? Totally unclear. But the ones that are getting the most attention involve pictures of former presidents and current president of the United States. So here we go. This is number 29. There you see a picture. That's Bill Clinton, Maxwell, and Epstein. We don't know who the woman to Bill Clinton's right is, but I'm told that's Jimmy Buffett.
That's his wife, Jane.
And that's Jane Buffett. Thank you for that. So there's that. Again, undated. Now, Bill Clinton used Jeffrey Epstein's plane on a few occasions. We don't know where this was taken, but there's nothing incriminating about the photo. And we all know Jimmy Buffett wouldn't do anything wrong. So I don't know why they released that one. Now, here's one of President Trump. I read somewhere that this is not a new photo, that this one had been released before. There's others of President Trump with young women whose faces are obscured to protect their identities. And everybody's trying to kind of understand why they picked these to release with no context. It's a little weird. The White House is, of all the people pictured, and there's Woody Allen, there's Steve Bannon, there's Bill Gates. Of all the people, so far I've seen in press accounts, no reaction from anybody except the White House, which criticized Democrats for what they called misleading and cherry-picked redactions. So this is just the start, ladies and gentlemen. There are going to be photos and documents and grand jury testimony, transcript. There's going to be, you spend your holidays reading Epstein documents and looking at photos because there's like tens of thousands of these. President Trump was asked about this in the Oval Office a little while ago. Here's what he said.
There were new Epstein photos released today showing you and also Bill Clinton, Steve Bannon. What were your reaction to those new photos that were released
Well,
today?
I haven't seen it, but I mean, everybody knew this man. He was all over Palm Beach. He has photos with everybody. I mean, almost, there are hundreds and hundreds of people that have photos with him. So that's no big deal. I know nothing about it.
Okay. Gentlemen, Joel, start with you. Is this Epstein matter a matter, from your point of view, of concern to the American people or not?
I think it should be a matter of concern, and I'm disappointed in the way both political parties, including the president, have handled this. American people want transparency, they want justice, but what we have right now is just a lot of sensationalization. We saw this from President Trump prior to his reelection. We see this right now with many of the leading Democrats. But the bottom line is here is that there was an institutional failure for years leading up to the incarceration and ultimately the suicide of Epstein. There were regulators, prosecutors, even the media that were turning a blind eye to the stories that were coming out of his lifestyle. How is it that now, years later, the only two people that are really that have seen any repercussions from this illegal activity were Epstein himself and, of course, Ghislaine Maxwell? There were a lot of other parties potentially involved here. And what we've seen over the past year, initially with the new Trump administration releasing the binders that turns out it contained really nothing new and a lot of redacted information. And now some in Congress that are trying to sensationalize yet another release of redacted information. This isn't getting to the core of the problem. And that's that there was institutional failure and there's still a big mystery to be solved and crimes that have not yet been paid for.
Andrew, what's your biggest unanswered question about the Epstein matter?
Why is it that the Democrats have to be the one releasing these? I mean, President Trump campaigned on releasing these files, and yet he hasn't. I mean, here, Democrats are trying to push for transparency. They're clearly not covering anything up if they're releasing photographs of Democratic officials. So why is it that the Trump administration continues to stall, continues to obfuscate about what's in the files? And what are they even having to redact, right? You're having to redact this for criminal reasons or national security reasons. Like, what is it that they're trying to hide? I mean, this is really just a matter of putting the files out. I mean, you're journalists. You guys are fantastic at going through documents, and many of y'all are lawyers. So document review is right in your wheelhouse. And it would be much better if this was just all made publicly available so that everybody could go through and understand what the full scope of this was. And it's just mind-boggling to me that we continue to have this drama when it could just be done.
Well said by both of you. Let me ask you one more Maxwell question, Maxwell question, then we'll move to another topic. She was moved from a prison in Florida to a cushier prison in Texas, which is not normally the home to people who committed the kind of crimes for which she was convicted. Why do you think she was moved, Andrew?
I mean, I think sometimes the obvious answer is the right answer. I don't want to speculate, but I will say that it certainly wasn't a poor person or a person who was incarcerated for reasons that are empathetic. That was getting this sort of treatment. And I think this also speaks to the fact that it feels like there's two classes of justice in this country, and Maxwell is getting a preferred class of justice.
Joel, do you have a theory about why she was moved?
Well, there's certainly the appearance of a two-track justice system, one for the elites and those that are well-connected and wealthy, and then others who are treated differently. I want to give the justice system the benefit of the doubt. And that would be that if she were left in a typical facility for those crimes, she might be at risk of violence, perhaps dangerous violence from other inmates. She is a celebrity, albeit notorious, and perhaps she was moved for her safety. That's what I want to believe, but it has the appearance otherwise.
Yeah. Okay. The picture we saw of the president before is him with a Belgian model. And again, I say, I don't really understand the Democrats' choices here because we've seen videos and images of President Trump and Jeffrey Epstein together with attractive women in social settings. That's not new. So to put that photo out with no context is a little confusing. Mentioned before the Wall Street Journal interview with the president regarding the Fed and the two pieces of news in there regarding the two Kevins, and also his saying that he wants a Fed chair who will consult him on interest rates. Here's the president answering a follow-up question on that, again, moments ago in the Oval Office.
How big a role do you want to personally play in the decision by the Fed on interest rates?
Well, I've made a lot of money. I've been very successful, and I think my role should be at least that of recommending. They don't have to follow what I say, but we're going to be choosing a new Fed person in the pretty near future. But they went out, they went out with 71 different people, all economists and Trump. I was 71. And of the 71 people, I got it right, and one other person, I think from the Wharton School of Finance, my alma mater, got it right. There were two people that got it right out of 7, but I was one of them. So I think I certainly should have a role in talking to whoever the head of the Fed is or the Fed. I don't think that, you know, in the old days that used to happen. Nowadays it's sort of, they think it shouldn't happen. But I've done great. I've made a lot of money. I've been very successful. I think my voice should be heard. But I'm not going to make the decision based on that. I'll be making a decision over the next few weeks. Thank you all very much.
Okay, so again, previously the president said he decided who he's going to pick. Now he says he'll make the decision in the next few weeks. Again, just short answers from both of you. If you would, Joel, if you were king of the world, should the Fed chair consult the president on rate cuts or be independent?
No, the Fed chair should be independent, no consultations with the president. We've seen what's happened in other parts of the world when the chief executive of the country gets involved with the monetary system. It's not pretty. Look what's happened to Argentina in recent years before Malay. Look what's happening to Turkey right now, and of course, Zimbabwe. We do not want a president having any type of control over our money supply.
Now, he said no control. He just said he wants to be consulted. Will you object to even just getting the president's opinion?
I object to that as well. And we've seen to what extent the president takes things with the threats of even firing the current chair for no lawful purpose. No, the Fed should be independent, and that means engaging in their discussions with their own meetings.
Andrew, if you needed to, mandatory, you need to ask President Trump his advice on something. What would be most useful to you if he could give you advice? What advice would you want from Donald Trump?
You know, how to get a cameo in the next Home Alone movie.
Is there going to be another one?
Probably. I think they've done 7.
Do you know there's a Home Alone tour you can do in New York? They take you around in a limo to all the venues.
Oh, I would love to do that.
All right. Well, it exists. Andrew, what's your view of this question? Is it proper for the president to say, I'm on a Fed chair who will consult me on rate cuts?
No, it's absolutely improper. I mean, this is an institution that was created solely for its independence, and he's sort of trying to rewrite history in this weird, wistful, make it up as you go way, and it's completely devoid of fact or reality. We've experienced this before. The Fed chair should be independent. When we see politics intervene in our monetary policy, we see negative outcomes for everyday people, and we shouldn't have it.
Have either of you ever lived in Maryland?
DC, so just
DC.
over the line.
All right, neither of you. So I can't call either of you a Maryland man. Either of you know what Abreu Garcia's voice sounds like? Either of you ever heard him talk?
Yeah.
You have? Okay. I don't remember hearing him talk. Here he is, newly released. Kilmar Abreu Garcia, number 24, please, talking about injustice. Well, we need the audio, or the whole thing's ruined. Sam, we have the audio?
They'll translate in a second.
I stand here today with my head held up high, and I will continue to fight and stand firm against all of the injustices this government has done upon me.
Andrew, where'd you hear him talk previously?
No, I saw this video.
Oh, earlier today. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, but not before today.
No. But this is, I mean, I have spoken to so many people who are now concerned about the birthright citizenship issue, who are seeing these immigrants used as political footballs, and it's just un-American, right? This is such a far cry from the new Colossus poem that we see at the steps of the Statue of Liberty. Give us your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, and instead we have give us your hardworking Americans who've worked so hard to get to this country, and we're going to throw them in jail after we've taken their taxes. This is absurd.
Let me ask you, Joel, what to you is the lesson of this Abreu Garcia story? If you were lecturing at a high school civics class, they said, what's gone on with this man? What's the story? What would you say the lesson is for the country?
Well, the lesson here is really a lack of both law enforcement and proper following judicial orders. Let's back up a little bit before Mr. Garcia became a household name. We know that our courts had granted him protective status, ostensibly because he was under threat of gang violence in his home country. And he was ordered by the court. He could not be deported until that had been sorted out. And the Trump administration removed him anyway in defiance of that court order. It was our own Supreme Court here in the United States, which majority of them were appointed by Republican presidents, that demanded that the administration seek his return after they deported him. So first off, our administration did not have a right to deport him. Now, after he was returned to the United States, he was pulled over. He was accused of being engaged in human smuggling several years ago. And if that's true, he needs to be held accountable. But the prosecutors and the federal government need to move forward on those charges, move forward on the prosecution if they believe there's evidence that warrants that. So I think this is a failure just on multiple ends. He was overstayed his lawful status, and then the administration went against court orders that had given him protective custody. It's really a mess all around on this.
Well, but if I could just interject, there's also this issue about testing the limits of the willingness to enforce judicial order, right? They have made this decision largely driven by Stephen Miller that they are going to try and push and prod around the edges of the rule of law in the United States. And they have determined that immigrants are the most vulnerable community and the one that's least likely to be defended. And they frame them as criminals when in fact 99% of these people that they're going after are hardworking immigrants who come and pay taxes and are actually servicing our communities and helping make things better. And they're using this to determine how far they can go in other ways, in other places, and on other issues to go around the courts and implement laws that were not passed by Congress and laws that were not vetted by courts.
Andrew, they did come to the country illegally, though.
I mean, you cannot blame poor people for not wanting to die.
Well,
like that's the basis of this, right? Like these people are under threat. These people are fighting for their lives.
Well, some of them are. Some of them are, but some of them just come here illegally because they want to work.
Yeah, but that's not what we're talking about in this case. That's exactly the argument that the Trump administration is trying to take advantage of to push the edge on the rule of law and what can be implemented.
All right. I got to stop you guys just because a couple more topics I want to get to, then the community questions. And I didn't mean to cut off, but I think you both got to say your piece. A lot happened today on this thing in Minnesota where there's this massive fraud, hundreds of millions, billions of dollars. And the president was asked about it. But earlier in the day, the governor of Minnesota, Mr. Waltz, was holding a press conference, Governor Waltz, explaining his view that when asked if the Somali American population should be held accountable for what went on, here's what he said. Number 19, please.
I want to hear more from members of leaders from the Somali community to say, we need to look at ourselves. We need to hold our own neighbors accountable because look at the damage that this has done to our community. What do you want to hear more from instead of just saying, don't blame us? Do you want to see more ownership and oversight from within this?
Look, it's not law-abiding citizens. If that were the case, there's a lot of white men should be holding a lot of white men accountable for the crimes that they have committed. I think for the community to maybe educate their population, because I think what you're seeing here is there's secondary victims in this, that there's providers inside the community that are then victimizing the community themselves by signing them up, because when we're going to some of these people, they're like, I had no idea I was in this program. So I think it's asking us then, for every crime, which of course the majority being committed by white men, asking us to do more about that. I think it's crime in general. And I think the biggest thing on this is just making sure that we're educating the population. And again, this is 80 people or so that have been convicted in this, maybe some more in that.
Okay, and a little bit more, number 20, Sam. Same concept, number 20.
Again, this is 80 people or so that have been convicted in this, maybe some more in that, out of a broader ring. Medicaid fraud will stretch across all racial demographics, all ethnic groups. So I think it's really important for us to note each community's got this in their own midst, but to blame them and say that they should have been responsible for stopping it, I think that's a pretty hard reach. I think we continue to educate folks about why they shouldn't commit crimes. You would hope that it's being taught both at home and at schools and in our society. But no, I think this idea that the Somali community's to blame for this because they didn't do more, I think that's how we got into this. And that's, again, I know we're not going to lose the whole plot here. All this work that's being done, Donald Trump brought this to the attention like this is something brand new. This is not brand new, and it's been being worked on, but he made it white hot and very dangerous.
Here's the CBS News did a big report on this whole thing today and brought some new facts to light. Here's a soundbite from the U.S. Attorney, Mr. Rosen, on the case. Number 21, please.
Happened here in Minnesota that allowed this fraud to materialize, to metastasize.
It appears that the people at the highest levels of responsibility in the government of the state of Minnesota looked the other way.
Okay, and finally, here's the President of the United States again, just a little bit while ago, talking about what happened today.
I think she's very bad for our country. All she does is complain.
Omar.
She comes out of a country where they have no government. They have no military. They have no police. They got no nothing. They don't have a country. And they run around killing each other. And then she comes over here. She tells the United States of America how it should be run. We don't want to hear from her. I don't want to hear from her. I don't want to speak for Emmer, but I don't think Emmer particularly wants to hear. But don't say it because I don't want to get you in trouble, okay? Just be nice and easy, all right? I'll do it for you, but that part I'll do. But I just want to say that there's nothing worse than a person that comes in and does nothing but bitch and comes from a place where she shouldn't be telling us what to do. She shouldn't be telling us, and everybody agrees with me. And what's happening in Minnesota with Somalia, where billions of dollars is being stolen, right, like candy from a baby, we're not going to let that go on. And it's too great a state to have that happening. And guys like Tom Emmer and others, Pete Stauber, guys like them, they're going to stop it. And they're going to be given the authority to stop it. Because this country is not going to put up with it anymore.
Andrew, what's your view of this controversy?
I think there's a lot of projecting going on in that statement. I mean, President Trump complaining about people complaining. It's a little projection. I mean, we've seen how much he's complained about the news coverage about himself. We've seen how much he's complained about things like the way they portray his crowd sizes, right? So I think this is a mountain out of a molehill. When you actually look at the dollar amounts of Medicare and Medicaid fraud, it's often these corporations that have perpetrated the most significant dollar amount. And now we're scapegoating the Somali American community in Minnesota, when in fact, most of them weren't even aware of their enrollment in the program. These were people who were non-native English speakers who were being taken advantage of. And at the same time, you know, if there was anybody who did push the envelope, like poor people are going to try and get money. And the larger issue is that we have eroded the social safety net in the United States, particularly around immigrant communities. We're not providing the support that we need to allow them to get on their feet. And we know that once we do give them that support, they become thriving American citizens that help grow our economy. And we're not doing what we need to make that happen.
It may be my monitor, but Joel, do I see little white puffs of smoke coming out of your ears?
Well, look, Andy, I really like you, but this isn't a story about a few poor people getting money. We're talking about potentially 80 people that defrauded taxpayers to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. This was a lot of money. It was a concerted effort. And look, I don't think we should, of course, be blaming any entire immigrant community or non-immigrant community for the fraud perpetrated by a handful of that community. That is not right. And I don't agree with all of the president's statements on that. But to see what Walz was doing, Governor Walz, and just deflecting criticism from this and trying to shift the focus to the crimes that other races commit, this should not be a racial issue. The government of Minnesota either turned a blind eye or they were very negligent in uncovering the fraud that was occurring. This took federal prosecutors getting involved to uncover this and to prosecute it. And that's what the focus can be on. Because if we have this type of fraud, it's not just that it defrauds taxpayers in general, it also harms the people that need that aid. And we did see Governor Walz mention that there were a lot of individuals that probably needed the aid that were supposedly signed up that weren't seeing a dime of this stolen money.
Yeah. But and there's one other piece that let's talk about. Like, we have cut the staff that allows for sufficient oversight over and over and over again. We've seen it with the IRS, where they've cut thousands of staff members that were added during the Biden administration, and the return on investment for those audits and those other enforcement methods was upwards of $1 trillion, according to the CBO, right? And we're seeing that same thing. Like, if you want to know why a lot of these programs can allow money to go out the door like this in a prolonged way without enforcement, it's because now the federal government has been gutted, whether it's through DOJ or other Trump administration cuts, and we don't have the staff in place in these administration agencies in order to successfully provide oversight on these programs, both at the state and federal level.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, just two things. Look, I'm all for more money going towards law enforcement and investigations, but another way to deter crime is to publicly and severely punish those engaged in the fraud, and that'll be a deterrence. That'll actually cut down the money that we need to spend on investigations if we punish publicly and do it severely.
All right, gentlemen, I want to get to two more things. We're going to get to the community questions. Again, please raise your hand if you want to get in. The Washington Post report of yesterday regarding the potential rescheduling of marijuana, reclassification, matched today by several organizations, including CNBC 26, Here's the headline. We had an extraordinarily spirited conversation about this topic on the morning meeting. I'm super interested to know what you two think. Here's the headline. Trump expected to sign executive order to reclassify marijuana as soon as Monday. Sources tell CNBC, and of course, pot stocks surged on that news. Joel, what's the greatest argument to reclassify marijuana, and what's the greatest argument against it from your point of view?
I don't see much benefit to reclassifying marijuana for recreational use in particular. If the president moves forward, this Congress should get involved and ensure that this remains a controlled substance. We are just now beginning to uncover the type of damage that marijuana potentially has on brain development in younger adults into their 20s. And we're just beginning to understand the negative effects of marijuana on those that are fully grown adults. So no, the president is wrong in moving forward on this executive order.
Andrew, are you a smoker, a joker, a midnight toker?
I probably fall more in line with the joker on this one.
Yeah.
But I think look, the biggest issue is that the federal government has been unable to fund research into cannabinoids and their different uses, both in a medical level and also in long-term effects, as long as it's been scheduled in this category, right?
So if the president takes this step, just to set a baseline here, then please continue. Would you applaud him if he does this? Criticize him? Not care?
Yeah, I mean, like you've got marijuana in the same class of drugs as heroin, and that's just
so. Would you applaud him if he takes this step?
I mean, I think it's long overdue.
Long overdue. Okay, so you guys disagree about this, and again, we had spirited disagreement this morning. Andrew, can you see the other point of view, or this one you think the other point of view that makes no sense whatsoever? Because many people like Joel, speaks for tens of millions, who say it's understudied, and what studies we have suggest that it's potentially horrible for kids, but even for adults, it has all sorts of negative health effects and societal effects. Are you sympathetic to the people who disagree with your point of view on this, or you don't see the other side?
Well, one, I think we are long overdue in providing substance abuse treatment and methods like that within our healthcare system, right? These are incredibly expensive opportunities that are often denied to the poorest individuals, who also are most likely to use and abuse substances like this, right? So if we can find a balance there, I think that's the perfect solution. So I don't think I disagree. I think, look, the classification of marijuana has caused an epidemic of incarceration.
Andrew, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just want you to focus on my question, and then I want to get Joel back in. Are you sympathetic at all to those who really are bothered by this, or you don't see the other side at all?
No, absolutely, I'm sympathetic. I think we need to have the best possible information and care for both substance abuse research, and outcome-based focus.
But that's not responsive. With respect, it's not responsive. People like Joel, some of the folks we had on this morning, the Speaker of the House reportedly, they just find this to be almost inconceivable.
Okay, but I find that part hypocritical. 15 years on the Hill, half of those guys are high at the same time. Like, let's be real. And DC is a legalized state, right? So you've got Andy Harris over on the one hand who keeps slipping in his riders, but at the same time, the Capitol Hill staffers who are going out and writing these same press releases saying, oh, we're aghast that marijuana is being legalized, are also going down the street to the dispensary on 8th Street and buying their weed.
That's a good investigative piece. Joel, I asked you for the best argument. Thank you. I asked you for the best argument for it, and you basically said there aren't any. Do you have any sympathy for the people who think this is a good idea, including reportedly the President of the United States?
I have sympathy for those that believe there are some medical benefits to marijuana use. But this is far different than endorsing this for recreational use. We see what's going on in places like Colorado, visit on the ground. And I lived in DC when they legalized it in DC too. This was not a good thing. I'm proud to have voted against it. And I saw what drugs, including marijuana, were doing to young adults in my own neighborhood in downtown.
Joel, would you ban alcohol?
No, I would not ban alcohol. I'm against prohibition of alcohol.
Okay, why? What's the difference?
Alcohol, as you know, is a controlled substance. We don't allow people to use it until they're 21. Furthermore, there is a very easy way of determining if someone is driving under the influence or operating machinery, for instance. That's very difficult to do with marijuana. Let's not add another substance to the mix.
Well, but many of the concerns that you and others express about reclassification of marijuana apply to alcohol. Health implications, driving under the influence, spousal abuse, the access children can get to it if it's legal. Many of the concerns you have about marijuana apply to alcohol. So why not ban alcohol?
Well, we tried that, as we know, back about
Yeah.
110 years ago, and that was largely a failed experiment. It has not yet failed in regards to banning marijuana or heroin. This is a matter of enforcement. And we're still discovering, once again, we're still discovering what this does at a young age to teenagers. We know the brain doesn't stop developing into their 20s. And we know that unlike most items related to alcohol, we also know that marijuana is a component that can, in some people, lead to some forms of psychosis. This needs to be studied more before removing this from the controlled substance list. And this is not something the president himself should be making a decision on.
All right. Well, reportedly, he's going to do it, much to my surprise. Anyway, quick word for sponsors, and then to your questions, and we're going to go over my 8 for 28 likely Democratic presidential nominees, and we'll get our guest point of view, but want to hear yours as well. Okay. Again, quick word from a sponsor. The friends at OneSkin are offering you 15% off. Go to oneskin.co/two-way, oneskin.co/two-way for 15% off. Use the promo code two-way. At this time, if your skin needs a little extra care because of the dryness from heating systems and other things, go use this opportunity to get 15% off the products from OneSkin with OS1 peptide. First ingredient proven to target senescent cells, the root cause of wrinkles, loss of elasticity. This is a science-based product like OS1 face, body, and eye. They deliver hydration, barrier support, and powerful longevity benefits. Right now, you can get all their products 15% off. Go to oneskin.co/two-way. After your purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please tell them you heard about them right here on Two-Way tonight. Thank you for that. All right, let's get a question in, and then we're gonna go through some of the items on 8 for 28. Reynolds, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know after you unmute where you are and your question for Andrew and for Joel.
Yeah. For who is it? Is it Andrew?
Yes, sir.
Poverty doesn't make you a criminal, and I hate when people sit down and say that someone's poor that they're going to turn to crime. So I would disagree with your arguments on that point. But as for, my question to you real quick, are you for open borders, or are you for some sort of immigration control?
I don't think either of those are mutually exclusive. Let me go back to your first point first. It does. If you're hungry and you're starving, people will steal to eat. Worse, if your child is starving, if your mother is starving, you will steal to feed them. And that's this fundamental problem. I get so frustrated. I grew up in religious schools in the United here and in Atlanta. My boss was a Baptist minister for a long time. And they talked about what it is to care for our community, what it is to see the weakest among us, right? And how we take care of that in a Christian value sense. And I get so frustrated when we don't understand and don't recognize the fact that it is too expensive to live in this country and that it is even more expensive to be poor in this country. And when people are forced to make choices between medicine and food and other things like that, they're going to act in desperate ways. And it's unfortunate. And I think if we all just showed a little bit more compassion in our laws and in the administration of our social safety net programs, we would have a lot less crime. And this is something that's been studied and researched and verified.
Reynolds, follow up?
Yeah. On the affordability issue, I think one of the issues, I was reading a study about like what the home cost was in the 80s was like $89,000. But the average size of a starter home was like 900 square feet. And now the average starter home is like 2,500 square feet. So I think there are a lot of zoning issues. So I think a lot of the problem.
Yeah.
Like tiny homes.
Agree with you on
like
that.
I'm a big believer in tiny homes, but you have cities that try to ban those. But that would help out a little bit for the affordability.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a government issue. That's not an affordability. I mean, it's an affordability issue brought about by government and zoning, and the NIMBY people, not my backyard, on some of this stuff. So what's your thought process about that?
Why are those zoning laws in place? I mean, it's oftentimes because the people who can afford to donate, participate, and contribute in local elections with your county commission who writes the zoning laws, those are wealthy people. And so they have a vested interest in keeping property values high because they are pulling up the ladder behind them, unfortunately. And I think that's a mistake.
Well, But if you look at it, look at most major cities are run by the Democratic Party. So that's the Democratic Party issue. So you can't blame Republicans in the city of Atlanta for affordability issue when Republicans aren't running
Yeah, but the
the city of
affordability issue
Atlanta.
isn't just in cities, right? I mean, in Atlanta, the city of Atlanta is actually far smaller than the Metro Atlanta region.
Yeah.
And most of the most unaffordable neighborhoods in the Metro Atlanta region are actually outside of the city of Atlanta. Look at Johns Creek, look at Alpharetta, and these are Republican-controlled enclaves. So I reject that assertion.
Yeah, the whole region around the city is unaffordable, regardless of who governs it. Reynolds, thank you. Grateful to you. All right, folks, let's do something a little different. Let's because we've had great conversation. We're now a little short of time. Let's put up my 8 for 28, the main graphic, number 17, please. And we're gonna bring everybody in. We're gonna bring the whole family in here to talk about it. This is based on my reporting. You can hear my full presentation on the methodology on Next Up Now on the Megyn Kelly Network on YouTube or as a podcast. Here's my rank order of the most likely Democratic nominees. Again, this is not the general election. Don't tell me, oh, Gavin Newsom could never win Michigan. This is not about the general election. This is just about chances of being the nominee. Number 1, Gavin Newsom. Number 2, Josh Shapiro. Number 3, Pete Buttigieg. Number 4, Kamala Harris. Number 5, Andy Beshear. Number 6, Wes Moore. Number 7, J.B. Pritzker. Number 8, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Andrew, you first, your party. Who would you move higher? Who would you move lower? And who would you move off?
Okay, so I would move Shapiro further down because he would have to get through South Carolina, and the recent comments he made about Kamala and her book, you're just not going to get through the black political establishment in South Carolina saying things like that, right? Second, I would actually move J.B. Pritzker up.
Higher.
I think, I mean, I think
more
he's got a
likely.
likability. Yeah, I mean,
okay.
Like it's straight. The biggest financial scandal he has, he's really good at blackjack.
Yeah.
And for a billionaire to do that and have the resources and also the ways in which he's done party building and frankly beat Atlanta out for the Democratic convention shows he has a lot of pull inside the party. I would move him up.
Okay. Is there anybody not on the list who you think belongs in the top 8?
Maybe actually, yeah. I would put Raphael Warnock in there.
Okay. Interesting choice. Joel, thoughts? Anybody you'd move to a higher position, lower position?
Well, I would put Andy further to the top. I can't imagine him ranking below Kamala Harris. We already saw how disastrous that was. She lost to Donald Trump of all people. So I would see Andy from a relatively red state moving up, and I would have actually Josh Shapiro still at 2. What I see missing on the list, though, Mark, Jared Polis and Rahm Emanuel. I would have Jared Polis on at least the top 10 and Rahm Emanuel in the top 4 at least. I think he's positioning himself well. And I hate to do this, Mark, but just one thing. I heard a lot about how being poor is linked to crime. Look, I grew up a bit poor in my early years. My mom was on WIC for a while, but we grew up instilled with a lot of moral values. We had a lot of friends that were poor, lower middle class, that lived in trailer parks in rural Ohio outside of Columbus. And these are good people. And my dad and mom taught me from an early age, even when we had very little money, you got to follow the law. You got to be ethical. I remember stealing a pack of gum at 4, and I got in a lot of trouble. Had to call that store manager and apologize. I didn't shoplift again. I'll tell you that. So no, being poor does not make you necessarily more prone to crime. And guess what? There's a lot of wealthy people engaged in quite a few bad crimes as well.
But if we're going to take the other side of this, being rich does not make you less likely to have crime. It actually gives you the resources to engage in stealing on a scale far larger. But in our criminal justice system, we enforce a far more draconian set of laws and punishments on the poor when they go through engage in crime than we do in the wealthy, right? You just pay a fine and move on when you're rich.
Thank you both, gentlemen. You speak for tens of millions each. Put the list back up, Sam, if you would. Interesting, you both had critiques that were not the least bit consistent with each other, but consistent with some other people say. Rahm, I had on the list. I took him off for a variety of reasons. Jared Polis, I don't have on the list. I don't have Gretchen Whitmer on here either. I don't have Kamala. I don't have Michelle Obama on here. You got to play to win. And my reporting suggests people aren't going to run or aren't likely to run. I'm not going to put them on the list. I don't think Gretchen Whitmer will run. I don't think Jared Polis will run. That's why they're not on the list. Rahm Emanuel's every Republican's strongest candidate. For some reason, if the Democratic electorate were the Republicans, Rahm would be the nominee by consensus. As for moving Pritzker up higher, better on the list, have you watched him do interviews? Have you watched him do tough interviews? He can't answer tough questions. And I just really find that to be cautionary. Wes Moore, I would probably move off the list after that story ran that we talked about here last night, except it got no pickup today. Really interesting thing. As interesting that neither of you suggested moving Buttigieg down. That's probably the thing I heard most today from people reacting. Buttigieg should be lower than number 3. In other words, less likely. And as for Harris, I don't read the chat, but I glance at it. Somebody said she shouldn't be on the list. I had her not on the list. Not on the list until the last couple of days. I added her and I put her to number 4. Why? Very aggressive interview at the New York Times where she leaned very hard into looking like she's going to run. And then they put out her second wave of her book tour. And she's going to like 3 cities in Georgia. She's going to all these battlegroundish places. And again, this is not about could she win a general election, but if Kamala Harris runs and goes all in, I don't care if she's as disastrous as you could imagine. She's going to be a player in this contest because of her connection to constituencies and the parties. I got to get in some sponsors, then we'll get back to as many questions as we can. And if you want to comment on the list, you're welcome to do it. Here we go. Chef IQ, if you're going to cook over the holidays, here's a way to do it. Or if you want to give a gift to a chef in your life. Chef IQ, it's a wireless digital thermometer. You put it in whatever protein you're cooking, and it does the rest. You look at the phone app, and it will tell you how long should you cook it for? When should you turn it? When should you take it out? How long should you let it sit after you take it out? It's not witchcraft. It's not sorcery. It's not magic, but it feels like it is. If you cook with it, it'll change your life. It makes everything easier. Right now, Black Friday sale, Chef IQ Sense, their wireless cooking thermometer, everything else on the site, 30% off for the two-way community. Go to the chefiq.com. Use the promo code two-way for 30% off this great device. It's simple, it's elegant. You put it in, download the app. I won't say it physically takes it out of the oven, but it all but does it. Right now, for anybody in your life you want to get a great present for who cooks or should cook better than they are, give them this gift. chefiq.com, promo code two-way for 30% off the entire site. And one more, Joel, you ever take any CBD products?
Well, I did take a sleep with a melatonin.
Yeah.
And they said no THC CBD.
Yeah.
And I tried, and it was not a pleasant night's sleep for me. And it said no THC. So
Yeah.
I did try once.
Yeah. Okay. Well, here's an opportunity to sleep better with CBD products from CB Distillery. Over 2 million people have purchased the products there for better sleep, pain relief after workout, and to get some holiday calm. Go to cbdistillery.com. Products are natural, clean, no fillers or anything artificial. As I said, over 2 million customers. Give yourself, everyone on your list, the opportunity to get better sleep, less stress, pain relief with CB Distillery. Right now, 25% off your entire order. Go to cbdistillery.com. Use the promo code two-way at cbdistillery.com. An opportunity to have a more relaxed holiday. Again, cbdistillery.com. Promo code two-way. All right, Barton, welcome in. You can comment on the list. Put the list back up if you would, Sam. But Barton, you can tell us what's wrong with my list or ask about anything you want. Floor is yours.
Well, about your list, I think J.B. Pritzker should be taken off the list.
Yeah.
I remember reading Malcolm Gladwell's book, Blink.
Yeah.
And he talked about how just putting up pictures of certain people, you could predict who would win an election. And I can tell you that that Governor Pritzker's physical appearance, I mean, I'm not saying this in any derogatory way.
Yeah.
He can never be president of the United States.
Yeah.
And he's Jewish.
Yeah.
So let's be real.
Fat
He's
Jewish
not-
Jewish billionaire, you don't think is a shoo-in?
I think it's right, not a shoe. But what I was going to comment on, if you don't mind,
Yes, sir.
is this pearl clutching about the independence of the Fed. Every single president is always going to say lower interest rates, and Fed chiefs will do what they will. We've had instances, Arthur Burns and Nixon. Nixon pushed him to lower rates, and he did. Then we had LBJ and William McChesney Martin, and we had the famous thing with Truman and this guy named McCabe. The bottom line is presidents can say what they want. The Fed will do what it's supposed to do, just like Supreme Court justice.
Yeah. Barton, thank you. Joel, what you're wearing would actually look great with a string of pearls, although I don't see you wearing pearls that you clutch, but I think maybe Barton meant it metaphorically. What's your response? Barton's definitely thematically correct that we've seen plenty of presidents kind of jawbone the Fed. What's the big deal?
Well, okay, let's just back up into recent history. Look at what happened during the explosion of federal spending during the COVID shutdown, during the first Trump administration. Much of that spending was made possible by the Federal Reserve printing the dollars to buy the bonds. Now, we didn't see the inflationary impact initially. There was about a year and a half delay, but we did see a big burst of inflation during the Biden administration, and Biden took a lot of the blame for it, but a lot of the causation was actually caused by the Fed increasing the money supply, and it took some time to actually throughout the economy.
You had an independent Fed. Powell, no one told Powell to keep interest rates low. He was worried about the economy crashing during COVID, so he kept rates low during all the money printing. The Fed was independent. The Fed can make mistakes.
Barton, I got to stop you because we're at time. I'll give Joel one quick chance to reply to that second point Barton made.
Yeah, no, and you're right. The Fed did make that decision on their own, but my point is that we saw the disaster when you had the Fed making it possible for the government to spend an enormous amount of money without having to go and rely on the private debt markets. We don't want to run the risk of the Fed being even more susceptible into making the decisions that focus on financing government operations rather than maintaining the dual mandate of stable prices and low unemployment.
Barton, thank you. Very, very much appreciate the sophisticated question. Andrew and Joel, couldn't be more pleased to have you on and grateful to you for spending the hour with us. And I hope you'll both come back.
Thanks, Mark.
Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Right now, again, go listen to the full episode of Next Up. My guest, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, governor of Arkansas, and also my full explanation of the methodology of my reporting on the 8 for 28. And go ahead and tweet at me and tell me everything that's wrong with the list. And as you can see, both Andrew and Joel had strong opinions, and they didn't have anything to do with each other. Barton thought the governor should be off, and Andrew thought the governor should be more likely. So let's have at it. Again, Next Up is on YouTube, available as a podcast. Monday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern Time. I'll be back with the morning meeting. 2 great new guest co-hosts. Thank you all for tuning in and watching different folks try their hand. And we'll be back on Monday night with this program as well. Thank you all for watching. Again, thanks to Andrew and Joel. Have a great weekend, everybody.